Welcome to Relentless Truth with John Warren, the podcast that extracts truth from a wide range of topics, revealing who God is, who we are, and how we relate to each other. Now, here's John with this week's powerful and practical insights.
Welcome to Relentless Truth. I'm John Warren. It is good to be with you. Please like, share, review, and subscribe to Relentless Truth. For more information, go to our website, johnwarrenmedia.com. Today, we conclude our conversation with Hanegraaff. He serves as president of the Christian Research Institute and host of the Bible Answer Man broadcast and the Hank Unplugged podcast. He's the author of more than 20 books, including Truth Matters, Life Matters More, The Unexpected Beauty of an Authentic Christian Life. Today we continue our conversation, and Hank discusses his battle with cancer, his book Truth Matters, Life Matters More, and we close with a discussion of God's sovereignty. I want to go to your book, Truth Matters, Life Matters More. You talk about it in your podcast. The rest of the title is The Unexpected Beauty of an Authentic Christian Life. And for those who don't know your story in recent years, you and I share some medical crises and some challenges there. But this to me is such an important book for a time such as this. Now, you and I have discussed this post-truth world, as I mentioned, that we live in today, and the importance of holding firmly to absolute truth. But I'm wondering if you just talk about the book and talk about the idea, this notion that life matters more.
Yeah, it's, this is a really important concept to me. I mean, I finished this book while I was going through a 4-year battle with cancer. And I decided really that I don't want to write any more books after this. Now, whether I hold to that in the long term or not, I really don't know. But I really love what I'm communicating in this book, because essentially I'm communicating the significance of truth. I'm saying that truth matters. I'm not saying truth doesn't matter or truth is less important. I'm saying truth matters. Truth really, really matters. In fact, outside the truth kept by the whole church, personal experience is deprived of certainty. It becomes a mingling of truth and falsehood. So truth is transcendently important. But I've discovered that there's life beyond truth, that truth leads us into life. And this is, again, why Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus is the path towards the Father, who is the embodiment of truth. So truth is significant. It is the bedrock. But I say life matters more because life involves a mysterium that is to be experienced rather than explained. It's not a prohibition upon knowledge, but it is the transcending of knowledge. It's the transcending of all philosophical speculation. And in my book, I tell the story of Thomas Aquinas, who in 1273, I think the day was actually December 6, 1273, he had a Eucharistic experience that caused him to stop writing his Summa. You might recall that his Summa was, one of the most prodigious works in the history of writing.
Indeed.
I mean, hard to imagine anything more significant than this Summa, because what he tried to do is he tried to codify all of truth as a coherent whole. So he tried to take truths from anthropology and science and ethics and psychology and political theory, theology, and he tried to harmonize all of that under the banner of truth. And he hadn't finished it when he had this Eucharistic experience in a chapel. This Eucharistic experience so changed him, so utterly rewired his circles. He had an experience of the real presence of God that he said to his secretary, Reginald, my brother's name is Reginald, he said, I cannot finish my work because all I have written seems as though it is so much straw. And it gives you some kind of a glimpse of what that experience meant to him. Not an experience that was ungrounded or unfounded, but an experience that came out of his understanding of truth. Now, fortunately, he didn't say, well, I've had this experience, so now I'm going to throw away everything I've written in the Summa because we would have been impoverished if we didn't have that corpus of information. It's very, very significant, important, and transformational. He allowed what he had written to carry on to his posterity and vicariously to us, but he was transformed. And I had a similar experience. I could define truth, I could debate truth, I could defend truth, but I wasn't experiencing the life that matters more. And my experience over the last maybe 10 or so years encompasses this idea of a life that matters more, a life that is transformational, a life that is formed within this repository of jewels that I talked about earlier, that there's no bottom to. And it is a life that is focused not on just knowing about God, but knowing him experientially. And I think there's a lot of ways in which you can experience that. You can experience that through the Christian disciplines, through fasting, through prayer, through almsgiving. That's the triple braided cord that Jesus talks about in the Sermon on the Mount, but also through other disciplines, through reading things that are really transformational, through partaking in the graces that God gives us in the church. In the church, we receive graces that are transformational, that take us from one glory to another, which is exactly what Jesus Christ talked about when he talked to the woman at the well and said that if you drink of this water, you'll drink of water by which you will never thirst again. And of course, everybody wants that kind of living water. Jesus pointed her to that. And as you get into the treasure chest of Scripture, you find your way to that wellspring of life that matters more as well. But ultimately, you find that wellspring in a healthy, well-balanced church. Because, as St. Cyprian of Carthage once said, you cannot have God as your father without having the church as your mother. It is in the church that we see the graces that transform us from one glory to another, by which we experience what Jesus said, life and life more abundantly, the life that matters more.
And I think of the state of the church when you say that. That makes me shudder. You know, the one thought that I had as you were talking is this truth experience matter, this distinction. This is not a zero-sum game, is it? It's not. These concepts aren't mutually exclusive. They go hand in hand. You were prepared by the study of truth all these years for this change that you talked about over this past 10-year period.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a theologian that has really had a deep impact on me. His name is Vladimir Lawsky. And there are many things that he says that have been impactful to me. But one of the things, in reference to what you just said, is he said that Christian theology is always, in the last resort, a means. It's a unity of knowledge that subserves an end which transcends all knowledge. And then he said this ultimate end is union with God, or deification. Now, there's a cultic way or an occultic way of speaking of deification, and there's a Christian way of speaking of deification. He was speaking of deification in the sense of being a partaker of the divine nature, which means that you become more and more, as I was talking about earlier, more and more godlike, that you experience fellowship in the Holy Trinity, that you experience union with God, the very thing that we are created for. That is a Christian concept of deification. He also said this. He said that after the fall, human history is a long shipwreck awaiting rescue. But then he said, in concert with what we were talking about earlier, he said the port of salvation is not the goal. The goal is the possibility of the shipwrecked to resume a journey whose sole goal is union with God. In other words, we were created for fellowship in the Holy Trinity.
Folks, it is good to be with you. Please, again, like, share, review, and subscribe to the Relentless Truth podcast. And for more about our work, go to johnwarrenmedia.com. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Relentless Truth with John Warren. Please consider sharing this podcast and subscribe to receive future episodes. Connect with John regarding your comments, questions, and show ideas through johnwarrenmedia.com or at John Warren Media on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. That's all for this episode. Join us next week for another edition of Relentless Truth with John Warren.